I'm Emily. I'm going to be a social worker today. Just a few things to get out of the way before we start really getting into it is confidentiality is key here in our agency, and I would really like you to keep in mind that what you say to me is completely between us. Unless you show signs of wanting to harm others or harm yourself, first me and you will talk about it, of course, and I'll stay with you through that process, but I will have to report that to someone up so we can give you the help you need to keep you safe. Also, I would like to know before we get into this, if I could take some notes real quick while we're talking just to keep things going. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Awesome. So with that all the way, what brings you in today?
Okay, so basically I've gone through a lot of loss in my life. I've suffered through a lot of that, and I am pretty good at like coming to terms with the fact of like death. My older brother died 2 years ago, and so that's obviously still hard on me. And then my best friend passed away shortly after that, and that was who I kind of talked to everything about with, like, and then she died, and I was like, oh my gosh, who am I supposed to talk to about this? And then the second person that I always talked about was with stuff like this was my grandma, and then she passed away, so it was kind of like I felt like I was in this like never-ending like cycle of like people close to me dying, which sounds really depressing. And then my dad's really old also, and so he's 90, and so like I always keep that in the back of my head, like, oh my gosh, is the next person that's gonna die be my dad, which would be just so sad. Anyways, but you know, I've come to terms with the fact of like death, but recently I've been struggling because my brother had a drug addiction problem. He died from an overdose, but my mom refused to look at the autopsy, and she won't let anybody else look at it really, and so that's the only part right now where I'm really struggling, because anytime like I get upset about missing him, I always wonder like how he actually did die, because he did struggle with like depression, and he had suicidal ideation a lot, and so I always ask myself, maybe he killed himself, and it's hard to have those feelings and like not know, but I'm not sure how to like go about it, because my mom doesn't like to talk about it. But I know that my feelings matter as well, but I'm not sure how to like really go about it without upsetting her and overstepping where I stand. I don't know if you could like maybe give me any advice on that, or...
Absolutely. So first I'd like to say that the grieving process is never complete. Once you lose someone close like that, and you had lost quite a few people, the grieving process is really complex, and it's different for everyone. So first I really want you to know that you have my condolences for all the loved ones you've lost, absolutely. And feelings of depression or sadness or really intense grief at times could pop up at any time. And you're welcome to contact hotlines in those moments, and I'm happy to give you that type of resource if you're comfortable with that. Also, I heard that you had mentioned about talking with your mom about the loss of your oldest brother, and that he was a drug overdose victim. So what has she said something directly to you, saying, dismissing any questions about this autopsy that you wish to see?
Kind of. I've only asked about it once, because like I said, I don't like to bring it up around her. I don't like to bring up his death around her, because she's really sensitive to it, which I understand and I respect, but at the same time, like, I feel like I deserve to know. But whenever I did bring it up, I brought it up about 6 months after he passed away. And I asked if I would be able to see the autopsy, and she said that she had kind of signed it away to where nobody can look at it, unless of course she authorized the looking at it. But she wasn't like rude about it. She just kind of pushed it off, like she didn't really want to talk about it, and like, don't ask any further questions, and like, let's change the subject.
Right.
So I don't like bringing it up, because I obviously don't want to upset her if she's having a good day, and like, I don't want to upset her if she's having a good day, and if she's having a bad day, it seems rude to bring it up, and so it's like timing, and like, kind of like letting her know that like I have feelings too, and I need to know these things, but I'm not really sure how to go about it, and how to like, if she wouldn't let me see it, like if we do this, like how am I going to cope with that? Like, you know, like, because that's the only thing like that. Whenever I get upset, like, I'm always like, well, if only I knew, you know? So.
Is there something about his death that you feel responsible over?
I don't feel responsible for it because I know that, like, he chose to do the things that he did. There are times where I feel guilty knowing that I did know about his substance abuse using before his first overdose, and I didn't tell anybody because I wanted to have a close relationship with him, and so it felt like if I would have told on him, like I would have been a bad little sister. It was like probably 8 years ago now, so whenever that happened, but I know that it wasn't my fault, but at times I do think that I wonder if there are things that I could have done to maybe show him a better path or maybe help him, or you know, like, yeah, sometimes I do feel like I could have maybe made an impact on it, but which is hard sometimes because
I understand.
You know what I mean?
To me it sounds like you have made quite the progression in understanding your own grief, that you've thought about what you're thinking about a lot, which is very hard for some people when it's such an intense, immediate grief. A lot of people get really lost in their way and begin to think about some pretty unconventional things. But for me, it sounds like you've really thought this through logically and are allowing yourself to feel these emotions. And that is very good. I'm very proud of you for being able to do that.
Thank you.
So talking with your mother about this, getting access, I understand that you feel that she would be upset if you ever brought up your oldest brother and his death. And that's completely understandable. And it's good that you see her emotions and see them as respectable. But eventually you two may have to have a conversation, but giving your mother the proper time to reach the point to where she's comfortable. Maybe you'll be talking about good memories, and she'll bring up the conversation of allowing to let you know more about what had happened. But until then, I think it would be absolutely all right to continue seeking grief counseling and using other resources to cope with the grief that you do feel at moments where you feel like you don't know exactly what happened. And sometimes it's okay to feel like you need to know something more about a situation, especially when it has caused trauma or, you know, intense the grief and the emotions and the depression, and it affects your daily life. So wanting to know more is not bad of you to want to know, but I do wish that you would understand that understanding every detail, it may not be the way that you would like it to be. It may be more confusing than you think, and you may learn something that you wish you had not. So I'm going to say that this grieving process for you specifically may be a harder process than you had thought. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy and this will just go over smoothly and one day your mom and you will talk very easily about this. It's going to be a process, but from the way you talk about this and the way you've thought it through, I really believe that you could get through this and learn what you would like to learn and have the strength to cope with it. So I applaud you for being able to do that.
Appreciate that.
Is there anything else you would like to talk about concerning this?
I guess the only other thing that's really on my mind about the whole like grieving process is, since we're talking about my mom, and that, and I mentioned earlier that my dad is kind of old, sometimes it's hard for me to be around him, and that sounds like really not great, I feel like when I say, but it's hard because he's 90 years old, and I mean, growing up I had problems because people would always be like, oh, your dad's so old, and it would kind of be offensive because I'm like, he's my dad, and like, he's one of my biggest role models, and so like, to have other people say that to me, I'm like, it's like hurtful. As I've grown older, people like respect it more, which I appreciate, but it's hard for me to sometimes like have skills to be around him, I guess, because he is losing his memory, and like, he'll forget my name sometimes, and like, that's really hard to like have your dad like be like, who are you? But he's like funny when he does it, so it's like, oh, like, I'm Julie, like, remember me, your daughter, and like, but then I have to like hold back my tears, and it's hard because like I get frustrated with him sometimes, and I don't really know how to kind of take those emotions and like do something else with them, because I don't want to be bad and mad at my dad, and like my mom has to remind me that he's old, and like I know that, but it's hard because I get so frustrated because I don't like having to repeat myself, and I don't like having to like talk loudly and like, I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
Absolutely. So with your father being part of the elderly or the aging population, it's not exactly as rare as you think it is. So there are many forums online that discuss the frustrations, and I have to say that you are not alone in feeling that you feel guilty or upset or even angry when you're near your father, even though you love him unconditionally, which sounds that way. But absolutely working with someone, especially with a memory condition or memory loss, as they get older, it could cause quite a frustration, but keep in mind it's not a bad day for you, it is a bad day for them, because it hurts to forget someone you love with their name and recognize them. So working with your dad, it may seem aggravating, but keeping in mind that it is part of quality of life with him, and even if he forgets your name or even that you're related to him, it is always refreshing to smile, and kindness is absolutely free, and it costs nothing to no one to bring a smile or create, if he doesn't have older memories, create new memories and live in the moment with him and appreciate each minute, because that's truly where he's living at that moment. So in future sessions, if you'd like, I would love to keep up with your grieving process and discuss going forward with that, about reaching resources and learning to discuss these intense topics with your mother, as well as keep up with your relationship with your father. If that's good.
I would love that. I
Absolutely.
really appreciate that.
No problem at all, and I'm very proud of you for where you're at, how much you've thought about this, and for coming in to talk to me today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you.